So finally, we are done with the concrete fascia formwork, and the formwork into which the concrete will be poured to form the parapet or the concrete fascia. As you can see, the woodwork has been completed. The reinforcement has been put in place, and the only thing left now is concrete works. The concreting begins now, and hopefully in 2 days time we should be through, because we'll have to first of all cast all the parapet beams that will counter the weight of the wave. So we'll cast the beams today, and hopefully by tomorrow we'll start with the casting of the wave. Remember, I told you we are using the cast in situ, and basically we do use two types: the cast in situ or the precast. And the one here is the cast in situ. And it's called the cast in situ because in this case you have to cast the concrete fascia on top of the structure itself. You first of all make a formwork, which you are seeing now, after which you reinforce and then prepare a concrete which will be poured into the mold or the formwork, which when it dries it gives you the shape of the exact concrete fascia you want to have on top of the structure. And right now you can see the casting is already underway, and this is the back of the building. You can see the formwork neatly done, ready for concreting. So the difference between the cast in situ and the precast, as I was saying, is that in the cast in situ you take the concrete up, pour it into the mold to form the shape, the desired shape. But in the precast, we first of all mold it on the ground, and then hang it on top of the structure, after which concreting can be done. We normally prefer the precast because it gives us a neater finishing. In fact, the precast is cheaper than the precast, the cast in situ. There are many reasons why the precast is cheaper, which is actually the reason why we do prefer using the precast if the client cooperates. But the precast, you wouldn't need to buy all this wood, because you wouldn't need a formwork. You don't need to do this formwork. All you need is to mold it on the ground and then hang. So you can imagine how much you're going to save if you don't do this formwork. You save a lot of money. And then another thing is that with the precast, you don't need to plaster the concrete fascia or the parapet at the end of the day, because it's finished to test on ground before hanging. So you can see, so the money we have spent in buying the cement, the sand, and paying for labor for plastering, it will be saved when you use the precast. So with the precast, all you need to do is just hang and wait till you want to paint the house, you paint it as well. And the precast is also lightweight. It's not as heavy as the cast in situ. It's lightweight, so it doesn't impose too much load on the structure. That's it. And then another thing is that the precast doesn't actually require the amount of reinforcement that you will use when you're going with the cast in situ. That's this type. So when you take a look at the advantages, you will get to see that the precast, the benefit of the precast outweighs the benefit of the cast in situ. And now some persons do think that some persons do worry that the precast might end up failing at the end of the day. Maybe with time it might just fail, and then maybe to detach from the structure and crumble to the ground. No, it doesn't happen like that when you use the right persons. When you use the right persons, what we'll do is we'll mold some reinforcement bars into the precast, the precast. I mean, when we're molding the precast fascia on the ground, we mold in some reinforcement bars which will now hook into the beam before casting, and we make sure we don't leave any impurities that will separate the precast concrete fascia from the structure itself. And also we make sure we provide enough anchorage. We have columns in between the structure to be able to draw back or counter the weight of the concrete fascia. So when you make all the necessary provisions, you end up having a very, very safe and beautifully finished concrete fascia at the end of the day. So, but when the client decides to go with a cost institute, you don't have a choice than to allow him. But at the end, the cost of materials, I mean, just the cost of materials alone will outweigh the cost of both material and labor that will be needed for the precast. So we do advise clients who are willing to allow us to use a precast. We've been using precast for so long and we haven't had issues with it. The only reason why a client might decide to go with the cast is because most of the time we sit down, then calculate the extra cost. We look at how much it might cost us extra to be able to install the precast, because the precast, as I said earlier, is cost effective. It saves material, but it's labor intensive. So it is labor intensive in the sense that it takes a lot of work to be able to achieve it perfectly well, and that means that I'll have to pay more to be able to get the job done. Meanwhile, the client paid for the cast institute, which is cheaper labor-wise, but costlier material-wise. So when we sit the client down and then we'll talk about the extra cost, we'll look at the amount he would have spent on the material. So you might decide to just tell him, all right, you're paying 50-50, we'll divide the cost of material into two, you give us half, which will now serve as the extra cost, the extra labor cost. If the client accepts, then we'll go with the precast. Sometimes we discuss it before we even start work. If the client accepts, we end up within the precast concrete fascia, which we ourselves, I think from the experience so far, it has been the best, fast, reliable, and finish the test. I mean, ends up giving you a beautiful aesthetic value. It gives us a good aesthetic value. So that's it. So hopefully, as I was saying, as I said earlier, by next week we should be through with the parapet works, the concrete fascia work, and then maybe in 2 weeks or so the roofing of the structure can begin. So we take you into the compound. So you can see everything is neatly done, because we consider the next stage. I'll always put the next stage in consideration in our current stage, because when you do a bad job in this stage, you end up paying for it in the next stage. So assuming you have a bad job in this stage, maybe during the roofing or even the plastering, you end up paying for it. So the best thing to do is whatever stage you're in, you make sure it's as neat as possible to be able to avoid inconveniences in the next stage. So that's the structure, and you receive more videos as we progress.